The heavy Seattle rain slammed against the thick glass of the penthouse bedroom. It was a cold, nasty night, the kind that made the whole city look like a washed-out grey painting. Mary stood at the edge of the massive king-sized bed, her dark skin shivering in the cool air conditioning. She frantically snatched her grey janitor pants off the hardwood floor. Her hands shook so badly she could barely pull the zipper up. On the bed, wrapped in dark silk sheets, lay Lee Jae-hyun, the billionaire CEO of the company she scrubbed toilets for. He was asleep, his broad chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. A jagged, ugly scar ran down his left shoulder, a reminder of the trauma that had stolen his voice 3 years ago. Mary stared at him, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Last night was supposed to be just cleaning, just mopping the floors on the top level, but then he had looked at her with those hollow, broken eyes, and one thing led to another. It was a mistake, a massive, stupid fuck-up. But that wasn't why she was shaking. When she opened her eyes 10 minutes ago, a wave of memories crashed into her brain. Not her memories of a trashy romance book she read years ago. She knew exactly what was going to happen next. Her aunt and cousins were going to find out about this night. They would blackmail Jae-hyun's family. They would force an arranged marriage. Mary would get pregnant with twins. Her relatives would bleed him dry, ruin his company, and in exactly 2 years Jae-hyun would die in a horrific train crash. And Mary would be left with nothing, tossed into the streets to die. Fuck that, Mary whispered to herself. She grabbed her shoes, not even bothering to put them on. She just needed to get out of this building. If she ran away right now, she could change the story. She could save her own life. Mary took one step toward the bedroom door. A cold, hard hand clamped around her wrist. Mary gasped and spun around. Jae-hyun was awake. His dark hair was a messy halo around his sharp, handsome face. His black eyes stared at her, wide awake and completely empty of any softness. His grip on her arm was like a steel trap. He pulled her backward, forcing her to stumble against the edge of the mattress. Before we find out what this terrifying, mute CEO does next, please take a quick second to leave a like on this video. It really helps the algorithm push more dark, gritty romance stories just like this one straight to you. I also want to know what you guys think. Do you think Mary should risk it all and tell Jae-hyun the truth about the crazy novel plot right now, or should she keep her mouth shut and fight her way out the door? What do you predict Jae-hyun will do if she tries to hit him? Have you ever been in a situation where you just wanted to pack your bags and disappear completely because things got way too messy? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you are enjoying Mary's fight for survival, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update. Now, let's get back to the penthouse. Mary tugged her arm, her sneakers dropping to the floor with a loud thud. "Let me go," she said, her voice shaking. Jae-hyun did not blink. He did not loosen his grip. He just stared up at her from the bed, his face a perfect hard mask. The only sign that he was even human was the slight flare of his nostrils and the intense heat of his hand burning against her cold skin. "I said let me go," Mary repeated, louder this time. She planted her feet on the floor and pulled back with all her weight. Jae-hyun smoothly sat up. The silk sheets fell away, showing his bare chest and the tight muscles of his stomach. He didn't look like a man who spent his days sitting behind a desk. He looked like a fighter, a very dangerous one. He easily absorbed her pull, using her own momentum to yank her forward. Mary lost her balance and fell onto the mattress, her knees hitting the soft edge. She threw her free hand out to catch herself, her palm slapping against his warm chest. He felt like solid rock. He reached out with his other hand and grabbed her chin. His long fingers pressed into her jaw, forcing her to look him in the eye. "Don't touch me," Mary hissed. She slapped at his hand, but he didn't even flinch. He tilted his head, watching her panic with a strange, dark curiosity. Then he let go of her chin. He reached over to the nightstand and picked up his expensive phone. He kept his left hand tightly wrapped around her wrist while his right thumb moved quickly over the screen. A second later, a robotic female voice came from the phone's speaker. "Where do you think you are going?" Mary swallowed hard. Hearing that cold, artificial voice come from a man so intimidating made a shiver run down her spine. "Home," Mary said. She glared at him, trying to hide how scared she really was. "I'm going home. My shift was over 4 hours ago. I have to get out of here." Jae-hyun typed again. "You are running away." "I'm not running," Mary lied. Her heart beat so fast she felt sick. "I just have a life, a terrible, broke life, but it's mine. Last night was. It was a mistake. Let's just pretend it didn't happen. You're the boss, I'm the janitor. It's better for both of us if I just walk out that door and we never speak again. Jae-hyun's eyes narrowed. The shadows in the room made his sharp cheekbones look even more severe. He knew she was lying. He could see the absolute terror in her eyes. He typed another message. You belong here. Mary laughed, a short, bitter sound that held zero humor. I don't belong anywhere near you, Mr. Lee. You don't know me, you don't know my family. If you keep me here, my aunt is going to find out. She's going to ruin you. Jae-hyun raised an eyebrow. He looked almost amused. He tapped the screen. Let them try. You don't get it, Mary yelled. She pulled her arm again, but his fingers just tightened. They are going to force you to marry me. They are going to take your money. They are going to make your board of directors hate you, and then you are going to die in a train crash. Silence filled the room. The only sound was the heavy Seattle rain beating against the glass. Jae-hyun stared at her. His expression didn't change, but something dark and heavy shifted in his eyes. He slowly let go of her wrist. Mary scrambled backward, almost falling off the bed. She grabbed her sneakers and hugged them to her chest like a shield. She watched him, waiting for him to call security, waiting for him to think she was completely insane. Instead, Jae-hyun slowly got out of bed. He didn't care that he was completely naked. Mary quickly looked away, her face burning hot. She stared at the expensive grey rug on the floor, listening to his quiet footsteps as he walked to the huge closet. A minute later, he walked back out wearing a pair of black sweatpants. He tossed a clean white t-shirt at her. It hit her in the face and fell into her lap. He held up his phone. The robotic voice spoke again. Put it on, you are shivering. I don't want your clothes, Mary said, tossing the shirt back onto the bed. I want to leave. Jae-hyun walked slowly toward her. He stopped right in front of her, forcing her to look up at him. He was so tall. He leaned down, placing both hands on the mattress on either side of her hips, trapping her. He brought his face close to hers. She could smell the mint of his breath and the dark, musky scent of his skin. He didn't use the phone this time. He just held her gaze. His eyes told her everything she needed to know. She wasn't leaving. He wasn't going to let her. The trauma that had locked his voice away had left him obsessive, broken, and dangerously stubborn. He had found something warm in the dark last night, and he was not going to let it walk out the door. Mary felt a tear slide down her cheek. Please, she whispered. If I stay, we both die. You have to let me go. Jae-hyun reached up and wiped the tear away with his thumb. His touch was surprisingly gentle. He pulled his phone from his pocket with his other hand and typed one single word. No. Mary closed her eyes. The plot of the novel was already starting to lock her in. The doomed marriage, the twins that would soon grow inside her, the deadly train crash. She was trapped in the web, and the spider holding her was a mute billionaire who had no idea he was meant to die. If she couldn't run, she had to fight. She had to figure out a way to break the story from the inside. She had to survive her greedy family, and she had to keep this stubborn, terrifying man alive. Mary opened her eyes and looked at the heavy rain outside. She took a deep breath. Fine, she said, her voice dropping into a low, hard tone. But when the shit hits the fan, remember that I tried to warn you. Jae-hyun just stared at her lips, a tiny smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. He stepped back and typed on his phone. Make me breakfast. Mary let out an angry breath. I'm a janitor, not your personal chef. Jae-hyun turned around and walked toward the kitchen, not looking back. He knew she would follow. Mary stood up. She looked at the door. It was right there. She could run. She could try to beat him to the elevator. But the memory of his iron grip stopped her. He would catch her, and if he caught her again, he might not be so gentle. She picked up the white t-shirt from the bed and pulled it over her head. It smelled like him, clean, expensive, and dangerous. She walked out of the bedroom and down the long glass hallway. The kitchen was massive, all black marble and shiny stainless steel. Jae-hyun was sitting at the island counter, leaning his elbows on the cool stone. He was watching her. Mary walked to the fridge and yanked the door open. It was full of expensive water and strange green juices. She grabbed a carton of eggs. If you want me to cook, you better have hot sauce, Mary muttered. Jae-hyun tapped on his phone. Top shelf on the right. Mary grabbed the hot sauce and slammed the fridge shut. She found a pan and turned on the stove. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the loud, screaming silence of two people who had absolutely no idea what they were doing. She cracked the eggs into a bowl and started beating them with a fork. She hit the fork against the side of the bowl as hard as she could, letting out her anger. "My aunt is going to call me in an hour," Mary said, not looking at him. "When I don't answer, she's going to track my phone. She put a tracker app on it last month. She said it was for my safety, but it's just so she can make sure I don't skip my shifts." Jae-hyun watched her back as she poured the eggs into the hot pan. He typed, "Let her track it." Mary turned around, holding the spatula like a weapon. "Are you stupid? I just told you what she's going to do. She will show up here, she will see us, she will take pictures and send them to the news. Your company's stock will drop, your board will demand you step down." Jae-hyun didn't flinch, he just rested his chin on his hand and stared at her. He looked bored. "You don't care about your company?" Mary asked, genuinely shocked. He typed slowly, "I care about what is mine." Mary felt a hot flush creep up her neck. "I am not yours, we had sex once. That makes us a mistake, not a couple." Jae-hyun's eyes darkened. The bored look vanished instantly. He stood up from the stool. He moved so fast Mary took a step back, bumping into the hot stove. He walked around the kitchen island and stopped right in front of her. He reached out and wrapped his hand around the back of her neck. His fingers slid under her thick braids, pressing firmly against her skin. Mary froze, the spatula trembled in her hand. He leaned down until his lips were right next to her ear. He didn't speak. He couldn't speak. But his heavy breathing sent a clear message. He was claiming her, right here, right now, in the middle of a rainy Monday morning. Mary swallowed the lump in her throat. The plot of the novel said that Lee Jae-hyun was a cold, unfeeling machine. It said he married the main character purely out of obligation after the scandal broke, and then ignored her until the day he died. But the man standing in front of her right now, holding her neck like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth, did not feel cold. He felt like a fire that was about to burn her entire world to the ground. Mary closed her eyes and let her head drop slightly, giving in to his touch just for a second. If she was going to fight the story, she needed to understand the man. And right now, the man was making it very hard to think straight. The smell of burning eggs filled the kitchen. Mary snapped her eyes open and pushed him away. Shit, the eggs. She quickly scraped the burnt mess onto a plate and slid it across the island counter. "There, eat." Jae-hyun looked down at the black, ruined eggs. He looked back up at Mary. He didn't smile, but his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. He picked up a fork and took a bite. He didn't even chew before he swallowed. He picked up his phone. "Perfect." Mary rolled her eyes and leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. This was insane. She was trapped in an apartment with a mute billionaire who liked burnt eggs, and in less than an hour, her nightmare family was going to kick the door down and ruin both of their lives. She needed a plan, fast. If she couldn't run away, she had to take control. She couldn't act like the weak, crying victim from the book. She needed to become the boss. Mary stood up straight. "Okay, if I'm staying here, we do things my way." Jae-hyun paused with the fork halfway to his mouth. He raised an eyebrow. "My aunt is coming," Mary said, pointing a finger at him. "When she gets here, you do not talk to her. Well, you know what I mean. You do not type to her. You let me handle it. You do not offer her money. You do not agree to anything she says. Do you understand me?" Jae-hyun slowly lowered the fork. He picked up his phone. "I protect you." "I don't need your protection," Mary lied. Her voice cracked a little. "I need you to not be an idiot. My family is toxic. They are leeches. They will suck you dry and leave you for dead. I am not going to let them do that to you." Jae-hyun stared at her. The words hung in the air between them. "I am not going to let them do that to you." Nobody had ever tried to protect Lee Jae-hyun before. People only ever wanted to use him, fear him, or take his money. He looked at the girl standing across from him. Her cheap clothes, her messy hair, the fierce, angry fire in her dark eyes. He slowly nodded his head. He agreed. Mary let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Okay, good, now finish your gross eggs. I need to take a shower before the devil gets here." She turned around and walked out of the kitchen, her heart pounding in her ears. She was doing it. She was rewriting the story. But as she walked down the hall, she couldn't shake the terrible, heavy feeling in her chest. Changing the plot was dangerous. The universe didn't like it when you messed with destiny. And the train crash was only 2 years away. Before Mary even reached the bathroom, The loud, angry buzzing of the penthouse intercom echoed through the massive apartment. They were here. The loud, angry buzzing of the penthouse intercom echoed through the massive apartment again, pulling Mary out of her dark thoughts. The sound was sharp and annoying, like a warning siren. She stood perfectly still in the wide hallway, her bare feet pressing into the cool hardwood floor. They are actually here, Mary whispered to herself. Her stomach did a nervous flip. She walked slowly toward the front door control panel on the wall. Jae-hyun followed right behind her. He didn't make a single sound as he walked, his bare feet completely silent. He stopped a few inches behind her shoulder, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. Mary reached out a shaky finger and tapped the glowing blue screen. The camera feed from the ground floor lobby popped up. Aunt Vonda's face was pushed right up against the camera lens. Her thick red lipstick was badly smudged across her mouth. The heavy Seattle rain had completely ruined her fake hair, plastering it flat against her forehead. Behind her stood Mary's cousin, Shay. Shay was chewing loudly on a piece of pink gum and holding her bright yellow phone up, clearly ready to hit record. They both looked soaking wet, angry, and incredibly greedy. Mary took a slow, deep breath. She turned her head slightly to look back at Jae-hyun. "Stay here in the hallway, let me do this. Do not step out unless I ask you to." Jae-hyun did not nod. He did not pull out his phone to type a response. He just crossed his arms over his bare, scarred chest and stared at the blue screen, his black eyes totally empty. Mary pressed the unlock button. The heavy steel doors of the private elevator down in the lobby started to hum. It took exactly 45 seconds for the elevator to travel from the ground floor all the way up to the penthouse. Mary counted every single one of those seconds in her head. She wiped her sweaty palms on the sides of her large grey janitor pants. The white t-shirt Jae-hyun had thrown at her hung loosely off her shoulders. She knew she looked like a total mess. She looked exactly like a broke girl, who had just spent the night doing things she shouldn't have been doing with her billionaire boss. The elevator gave a loud ding. The shiny metal doors slid open. Aunt Vonda stepped out first. Her wet high heels clicked loudly against the expensive marble floor of the entrance. She wore a tight, cheap leopard print jacket that was dripping water everywhere. She smelled like a wet dog mixed with stale cigarette smoke and cheap vanilla perfume. Shay walked out right behind her, already holding her yellow phone up to record a video. Vonda stopped walking and looked around the massive living room. Her dark eyes went wide as she took in the giant floor-to-ceiling windows, the thick leather couches, and the massive crystal chandelier hanging above the dining table. Pure greed washed completely over her face. Her angry scowl melted into a hungry, nasty smile. "Well, well, well," Vonda said. Her loud, scratchy voice echoed off the high ceiling. "Look at this fancy place. You really hit the absolute jackpot, didn't you, you sneaky little bitch?" "Put the phone away, Shay," Mary said, taking a step forward. Her voice was shaking, but she forced herself to keep her chin up. "And keep your voice down, Vonda. You have zero right to be up here." Vonda marched right up to Mary. She poked a long, fake red fingernail hard into Mary's chest. "I have every damn right. I am your blood. I am the one who took you in when your deadbeat mother left you on the street. And this is exactly how you repay me, sneaking around with a rich man while I struggle to pay the rent." Mary slapped Vonda's hand away, hitting her wrist hard. "Don't touch me, I pay your rent, Vonda. Every single month my entire paycheck goes straight into your bank account. You don't struggle at all, you just want more." "It's not enough," Vonda yelled right in her face. She looked Mary up and down, staring at the oversized white t-shirt. "Look at you, you look like trash, but clearly the boss likes trash. Where is he? Where is the mute freak?" "Don't call him that," Mary snapped, her hands balled tightly into fists. The novel she remembered had told her this was exactly what her aunt would say. In the book's version of this fight, Mary had cried. She had begged her aunt not to make a loud scene. She had fallen to her knees on the rug and apologized for being a bad niece. Mary was not going to cry today. She was going to fight. "Oh, are you defending him now?" Shay laughed from behind her phone screen. "That's real cute, Mary. We checked his net worth in the car on the way over here. He is worth $4 billion. We are getting our cut. If you think you can keep this little dirty secret and keep all the money for yourself, you are stupid." "There is no money," Mary said, stepping toward her cousin. "I was just doing my cleaning job. It was a long, double shift. I fell asleep in an empty room, that is it." Vonda laughed a loud, ugly laugh that made Mary's skin crawl. "You think I'm dumb? I track your phone location. You have been in this apartment for 14 hours. You are wearing a man's shirt. and you smell like sex. Vonda pushed past Mary roughly, walking deeper into the living room. Mr. Lee, you better come out here right now. We need to have a serious talk about what you did to my innocent niece. Mary ran and grabbed Vonda's wet arm, pulling her back. Stop yelling, you are making a fool of yourself. Get out of here right now before I call the building security. Vonda ripped her arm away forcefully. Call the police too. Let's tell the whole damn city that the great CEO of the Lee Corporation is taking advantage of his poor, helpless janitor. Let's see what happens to his fancy stock prices tomorrow morning when the news hits. The media will eat him alive. They will say he forced you to do it. He didn't force me to do anything, Mary yelled. It was consensual, we are adults. You have absolutely no case against him, Vonda. It doesn't matter what the truth is, you dumb bitch, Vonda spit, her face turning dark red with anger. It only matters what the internet thinks is the truth. A rich, powerful man and a poor black girl who scrubs his toilets. The media will ruin his whole life. Unless, Vonda smiled again, showing her crooked teeth. Unless he does the right thing. He marries you or he pays us $10 million right now to keep our mouths shut. 10 million, Shay repeated, nodding her head and popping her gum loudly. Yeah, 10 million sounds fair for our pain and suffering. Mary felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. It was happening exactly like the cursed book said it would. The blackmail, the trap. They were wrapping the heavy chains around her neck, pulling her toward the arranged marriage and the doomed ending where they both died. She opened her mouth to scream at them to leave, but a dark shadow moved in the hallway. Jae-hyun stepped out into the open. The entire living room went completely silent. The heavy sound of the rain beating against the thick glass outside suddenly seemed extremely loud. Jae-hyun walked slowly across the floor. He wore only the loose black sweatpants. His wide, muscular chest was completely bare. The jagged, nasty scar on his shoulder looked angry and red in the bright morning light. His face was a total blank mask. He did not look scared, and he did not look mad. He looked completely empty, which was somehow 100 times more terrifying than if he had been yelling. He walked right past Mary and stopped directly in front of Vonda. He was a giant compared to her short frame. He looked down at her like she was a bug on his shoe. Vonda took a small step backward. Her tough, loud attitude cracked for a second. She swallowed hard, her throat bobbing. Mr. Lee, she said, her voice suddenly much quieter and shaky. I am Mary's aunt. I am her legal guardian. I'm 24 years old, Mary said from behind him. She is not my guardian. Vonda shot a dirty, hateful look at Mary, then quickly looked back up at Jae-hyun. She is family, and you took advantage of her. This is a very serious situation, Mr. Lee, very serious. Jae-hyun just stared down at her. He did not blink. He did not reach into his pocket for his phone to type a response. He just breathed, his bare chest rising and falling slowly, daring her to say another word. Shay lowered her yellow phone a little bit. Mom, she whispered, her voice shaking. He looks crazy. Let's just ask for the money and leave right now. Shut up, Shay, Vonda hissed without looking back. She straightened her wet shoulders, trying to look brave. Listen to me, Mr. Lee. We have real evidence. We have the phone tracking data. We have pictures of Mary walking into this private building last night. We know for a fact she didn't leave. If you don't want a massive, ugly scandal to destroy your company, you will compensate us for this dirty behavior. Jae-hyun slowly tilted his head to the right. A tiny, cold smirk appeared on the corner of his mouth. He reached slowly into his sweatpants pocket and pulled out his expensive phone. He typed something with one hand, his thumb moving incredibly fast. He pressed a button. The robotic female voice echoed clearly in the quiet room. How much? Vonda's eyes lit up with pure, sick joy. She thought she had won. She thought she had easily beaten the billionaire. She clapped her hands together. $10 million, cash transfer today, or you marry her and we get a monthly allowance of $50,000. Those are your only two options. Mary felt completely sick. Jae-hyun, no, she said, taking a quick step forward. Do not give her a single dime. I told you if you pay her she will never stop. She will keep coming back for more until you have nothing left. Jae-hyun didn't look at Mary. He kept his eyes locked on Vonda. He typed on his phone again. 10 million is cheap. Vonda laughed out loud. See, Mary, he knows exactly how the real world works. He is a smart man. 10 million is nothing to him, it's pocket change. I said no, Mary screamed. She ran over and squeezed herself right between Jae-hyun and her aunt. She turned her back to Vonda and glared up into Jae-hyun's dark eyes. You promised me, in the kitchen, you nodded your head, you promised we would do this my way. Jae-hyun looked down at Mary's angry face. His black eyes softened just a tiny bit. He reached his large hand out and gently touched her cheek, brushing his warm thumb slowly against her brown skin. It was a completely intimate, highly possessive touch. He was doing it on purpose, right in front of them, showing them exactly who she belonged to. Vonda gasped loudly. Look at that, Shay, get a picture of that right now, see, he is touching her face, it's disgusting. Mary didn't care about the stupid picture. She only cared about stopping the plot of the novel from coming true. She grabbed his strong wrist and pulled his hand away from her face. Don't play sick games with them. If you give them any money, you seal our fate. They will bleed you dry. Your board of directors will find out about the blackmail. They will force you out of your own company. You will lose everything you built. Jae-hyun looked at her closely. He studied the desperate panic swimming in her eyes. He typed quickly on his phone and held the bright screen down so only Mary could read the words. I have to test them. Mary stared at the simple sentence. Test them? What the hell did that even mean? Before Mary could open her mouth to ask, Jae-hyun stepped smoothly around her, completely ignoring her warning. He looked at Vonda again. He typed a new message and turned the volume all the way up on his phone. The robotic voice was loud and sharp like a knife. I will not pay you, I will marry her. Mary felt her knees go completely weak. The large room started to spin. He said the exact words from the novel. He was trapping them both. He was building the deadly cage around them with his own two hands. Are you out of your fucking mind? Mary yelled, losing total control of her temper. She pushed him hard in the center of his bare chest, but he felt like a brick wall. He didn't move an inch. I am not marrying you, I don't even like you. We had sex once, you crazy bastard. Vonda ignored Mary completely. She smiled a huge bright smile that showed all her teeth. A wedding? Oh, this is wonderful news. A real high society wedding. We will need an upfront payment for the dresses, of course, and we will need to move into a much better house immediately. It wouldn't look good for the CEO's family to live in a dump, right? Jae-hyun typed calmly. You get nothing. Vonda's wide smile dropped instantly. Excuse me. The robotic voice spoke again, louder this time. I will marry Mary. She will live here with me. She will have my last name. You will leave right now. If you ever contact her again, I will break both of your legs. The silence in the room returned. It was so heavy it felt hard to breathe. Mary stared at Jae-hyun's side profile, completely shocked. This is not how the book went at all. In the book, Jae-hyun paid the aunt the monthly allowance to keep the media quiet. He let the aunt bully him for months because he was tired and broken from his past trauma. He never threatened violence. He never protected Mary from her terrible family. He just threw money at the problem and hid in his office. But this man standing next to her was different. He was holding his ground. He was fighting back. Vonda's face turned dark purple with pure rage. You arrogant piece of shit, she spit, stepping forward. You think you can threaten me? I will call the news right now. Shay, dial the local news station. I want the cameras up here in 10 minutes. Shay's fingers shook badly as she started tapping on her yellow phone. Jae-hyun didn't look worried at all. He calmly typed on his own phone. He pressed a different button and a loud recording started playing from the speaker. It was not the robotic voice this time. It was a real audio recording. $10 million. Cash transfer today. Or you marry her and we get a monthly allowance of $50,000. It was Vonda's exact voice. Clean, clear, perfect audio. Vonda froze, her mouth dropped open. You recorded me. Jae-hyun typed again. The robot voice returned. Blackmail is a felony. The penalty in this state is up to 10 years in prison. Extortion is another felony. I have the best lawyers in the entire world. If you make one single phone call to the press, I will send this recording directly to the police. You will both go to a small, dirty cage for a very long time. Mary covered her mouth with both hands. Her heart hammered wildly against her ribs. He set a trap. He let Vonda demand the money on purpose just so he could record her doing it. He used Vonda's own sick greed against her. You can't do that, Vonda said. Her loud voice was shaking badly now. She looked absolutely terrified. It's a fake recording, you faked it on a computer. Jae-hyun typed. Try me. He took one large step closer to Vonda. He looked down at her with pure, cold murder burning in his dark eyes. He raised his left arm and slowly pointed his long finger toward the private elevator doors across the room. "Get out," the robot voice said. Vonda looked at the elevator. She quickly looked at her daughter. Shay was already walking fast backward toward the doors, her yellow phone shoved deep into her jacket pocket. She didn't want to go to jail. She just wanted easy cash. "This isn't over," Vonda whispered, but her tough act was completely broken. She sounded like a scared, wet rat. "You think you won today, but you didn't. She is bad luck, Mr. Lee. She ruins everything she touches. She will absolutely ruin you too." Vonda turned around and practically ran to the elevator. She hit the call button over and over again, her wet heels slipping slightly on the smooth marble floor. The doors slid open instantly. Vonda and Shay rushed inside. They didn't look back at Mary once. The steel doors slid shut with a loud clank, and the low hum of the elevator going down filled the room. They were gone. Mary stood totally frozen in the middle of the massive living room. Then her shaking legs finally gave out. She dropped hard to her knees on the expensive grey rug. She pressed her hands against her face, trying to block out the crazy morning. She had just defeated her family. The first major plot point of the Doom novel was officially broken. They didn't get the money. They didn't get control over Jae-hyun's company. But she was still trapped here. She heard his bare feet softly walking across the floor. He stopped right next to her. He dropped slowly to his knees, sitting on the rug right in front of her. Mary lowered her hands and looked at him. His handsome face was no longer cold and scary. He just looked tired. He looked like a man who had been fighting bloody battles his entire life. "Why did you say you would marry me?" Mary asked. Her voice was just a dry, weak whisper. "You could have just recorded her and kicked her out. You didn't have to say the marriage part out loud." Jae-hyun stared deeply into her brown eyes. He lifted his phone and typed carefully with one hand. "Because you belong to me now." Mary shook her head fast. No, I don't. You just saved me from my aunt, and I am very grateful for that. Really, I am, but you can't force me to stay here in this penthouse. I have to leave." Jae-hyun shook his head slowly. He typed again. "If you leave, they will come back for you. They will hurt you." "I can handle them," Mary argued loudly. He typed faster, his thumb a blur. "You don't have to handle anything ever again. I will handle it." "At what cost?" Mary asked. The hot tears she had refused to shed for her terrible aunt finally started to fall. They ran down her cheeks and dripped onto the oversized white t-shirt. "You don't understand, Jae-hyun. There is a deadly curse on this. If we stay together, bad things are going to happen. Your board of directors will find out eventually. They will try to take your company away. And then, in 2 years, you are going to die." She finally said it out loud to him, the deadly secret from the book. Jae-hyun didn't look shocked. He didn't look like he thought she was completely crazy. He reached out and wiped a tear from her cheek with his warm thumb. He typed on the bright screen. "Everyone dies. I only care about right now." Mary stared at the bright screen of his phone, reading his bold words over and over again. "Everyone dies. I only care about right now." She let out a harsh, wet laugh that sounded more like a sob. She pushed his hand away from her face and wiped her own cheeks with the back of her wrist. "You are so damn arrogant," Mary whispered. She looked at his scarred chest, unable to meet his intense black eyes anymore. "You think because you have $1 billion and a fancy penthouse, you can just ignore the rules of the universe. But you can't. You can't buy your way out of a cursed plotline. If we do this, if we actually get married, my family will find a way to destroy you. And if they don't, the universe will." Jae-hyun did not move. He just sat there on his knees, his broad shoulders relaxed. He watched her panic like she was a fascinating puzzle he had just decided to solve. He brought his phone back up and typed slowly. "I make my own rules." "Bullshit," Mary snapped. She grabbed the front of his white t-shirt that hung off her shoulders and pulled it tight. "You are just as trapped as I am. You just don't know it yet." Before we dive deeper into Mary's desperate plan to rewrite her deadly fate, take a quick second to leave a like on this video. It tells the algorithm to keep sending dark, gritty romance stories right to your feed. I also want to hear from you down in the comments. Do you think Mary should force Jae-hyun to sign a strict marriage contract, or should she try to sneak away the second he falls asleep tonight? What do you predict Jae-hyun will do when he finds out she actively wants to ruin the novel's plot? Have you ever had to make a massive, life-changing decision while completely terrified? Let me know your thoughts. And if you are loving this crazy ride, hit subscribe so you never miss a single chapter. Now, let's get back to the floor of the penthouse. Mary took a deep breath, forcing her racing heart to slow down. She needed to be smart. Crying on the floor like a weak victim was exactly what the novel wanted her to do. If she was going to survive this man and her family, she had to play the game better than all of them. She looked up, meeting his cold, empty stare. "Fine," Mary said. Her voice dropped, losing the shaky panic and turning hard. "If you really want to play this stupid game, we do it my way. I am not going to be your quiet, obedient little wife. I am not going to sit in this fancy apartment and let you handle my life. We are getting a contract, a real legal piece of paper." Jae-hyun tilted his head. A dark, amused glint flashed in his eyes. He tapped his screen. "What kind of contract?" "A fake marriage contract," Mary said, sitting up straighter. "We get married on paper to stop my aunt from going to the press. You get to keep your public image clean, your board of directors stays happy. But behind closed doors we are nothing. We don't share a bed, we don't act like a couple, and in 1 year we file for a quiet, mutual divorce." She watched his face carefully, waiting for him to argue. In the book, the arranged marriage lasted 2 years before the deadly train crash. If she could force a divorce in exactly 1 year, she could break the timeline. She could save his life and secure her own freedom. Jae-hyun stared at her for a long, heavy minute. The rain slammed against the thick glass windows behind him, casting grey shadows across his sharp jawline. He slowly lowered his phone to his lap. He reached out with both hands and grabbed her waist. Mary gasped. His large hands easily wrapped all the way around her sides. His grip was entirely too tight. He pulled her forward across the soft grey rug until her knees bumped directly into his. He leaned in, putting his face inches from hers. The smell of mint and dark musk filled her nose. He didn't use the phone. He just looked at her lips, his heavy breathing warming her skin. His black eyes were entirely serious. He was silently telling her that she was out of her damn mind if she thought he was going to pretend they were nothing behind closed doors. "Stop," Mary whispered, her chest rising and falling quickly. She put her hands flat against his bare chest, trying to push him back. He felt like warm iron. "I mean it, Jae-hyun, a contract, or I walk out that door right now and let my aunt ruin us both." Jae-hyun held her gaze for 10 more seconds, testing her limits. Then, very slowly, his tight grip on her waist loosened. He pulled his phone back up and typed a single message. The robotic voice filled the quiet room. "I will call my lawyers, go take a shower." Mary let out a shaky breath and scrambled backward, quickly getting out of his reach. She stood up on trembling legs. She didn't say thank you. She just turned around and walked fast toward the long hallway. The master bathroom was bigger than her entire apartment. It was completely covered in black marble and silver mirrors. Mary locked the heavy door behind her and leaned against the cold wood. She looked at herself in the massive mirror over the sink. Her dark hair was a messy, wild knot. Her brown eyes looked exhausted with deep purple bags underneath them. The oversized white t-shirt made her look tiny and fragile. "You are not fragile," she told her reflection. "You are going to fix this." She stripped off the shirt and stepped into the huge glass shower. She turned the silver dial all the way to hot. The steaming water hit her skin, washing away the cold sweat of the morning, but it couldn't wash away the heavy dread sitting in the pit of her stomach. She closed her eyes and let the water run over her face. The novel's plot was already moving. The marriage was happening, but there was one massive, specific detail that ruined everything in the book. The twins. In the story, the main character gets pregnant on the very first night. The discovery of the twin babies is what forces the toxic family to stick around and demand more money. The babies keep the miserable couple tied together until the bitter, bloody end. Mary opened her eyes abruptly. She looked down at her flat stomach. "Oh shit," she whispered. Panic hit her chest like a heavy hammer. Last night, they didn't use anything. She had been too tired, too caught up in the dark intensity of his touch to even think about it. If she was going to break the cursed plotline, she had to stop the pregnancy right now. She quickly turned the water off and grabbed a thick, fluffy black towel from the heated rack. She wrapped it tightly around her body and dried her hair as fast as she could. She didn't bother looking for clean clothes. She pulled the same oversized white t-shirt back over her head and stepped into her grey janitor pants. She shoved her bare feet into her cheap, wet sneakers. She unlocked the bathroom door and marched back down the hallway. Jae-hyun was sitting on the edge of the large, unmade bed. He had put on a black t-shirt that stretched tightly over his broad shoulders. He was holding his phone, typing a long message. He looked up when she walked into the room. I need to leave, Mary said. She didn't walk close to him. She stood near the bedroom door, keeping her distance. Jae-hyun frowned, his thick dark eyebrows pulled together. He quickly deleted whatever he was typing and wrote something new. No, I am not asking for permission, Mary said, crossing her arms over her chest. I need to go to the pharmacy. It's an emergency. I will be back in 20 minutes. Jae-hyun stood up. He walked slowly across the bedroom, his eyes locked on her. He stopped a few feet away. He typed quickly. I will have someone buy it. What do you need? Mary felt her face burn hot. She hated this. She hated having to explain her body and her choices to a man she barely knew, but she had to be ruthless. She had to be selfish. I need Plan B, Mary said, her voice loud and clear. I need the morning after pill, because if you think I am going to have a baby with you and tie myself to this nightmare forever, you are out of your fucking mind. The silence in the bedroom was instant and heavy. The sound of the Seattle rain hitting the window seemed to fade away. Jae-hyun stared at her. His black eyes slowly widened. The cold, empty mask on his face cracked, revealing a sudden, intense flash of raw emotion. It wasn't anger, it was something much darker. It was a heavy, possessive shock. He took a slow step toward her. Mary stood her ground, even though her heart was pounding in her throat. Don't look at me like that. We had one night. We are getting a fake marriage. A baby ruins everything. I need the pill right now. Jae-hyun raised his hand and rubbed his thumb firmly over his bottom lip. He looked away from her, staring at the hardwood floor for a long moment. He was thinking. He was processing the absolute reality that she was actively trying to erase any permanent tie between them. He slowly looked back up at her. He pulled out his phone and typed. I will drive you. Mary let out a breath. I can just walk. There is a store 3 blocks away. I will drive you, the robotic voice repeated, much louder this time. He walked past her, his shoulder brushing heavily against hers. He grabbed a set of black keys off the front hallway table. Mary followed him to the private elevator. They stood side by side as the steel doors closed. The ride down to the underground parking garage was completely silent. The air in the small metal box was thick with tension. Mary wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the cold air conditioning of the building through her thin shirt. The doors opened to a massive, brightly lit garage. Row after row of expensive, shiny cars sat perfectly parked. Jae-hyun walked directly toward a huge, matte black SUV in the corner. Its dark, tinted windows made it look like a military vehicle. He unlocked the doors and opened the passenger side for her. Mary climbed up into the high leather seat. The inside of the car smelled like expensive leather and his dark mint scent. Jae-hyun slammed her door shut and walked around to the driver's side. He got in and started the engine. It roared to life with a deep, powerful growl. He drove them up the ramp and out onto the wet Seattle streets. The heavy rain immediately started beating against the windshield. The sky was dark gray, making it look like late evening even though it was only 10 in the morning. Jae-hyun drove fast. He didn't care about the puddles or the slippery roads. His large hands gripped the leather steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were completely white. Mary looked out the side window, watching the blurry city buildings fly past. She felt his heavy stare on the side of her face. He was constantly checking on her, watching her every move. You don't have to be mad, Mary said quietly, not turning her head. It's the smart thing to do. You don't want a kid right now anyway. You have a massive company to run. Jae-hyun hit the brakes hard as a red light suddenly appeared through the rain. The heavy SUV slid slightly on the wet road before coming to a complete stop. He reached over the center console and grabbed her chin with his right hand. He turned her head forcefully, making her look directly at him. His jaw was clenched tight. He let go of her chin and quickly picked up his phone with one hand. You do not tell me what I want. The robotic voice sounded entirely too calm for the furious fire burning in his eyes. Then tell me, Mary challenged, leaning closer to him. Tell me you want a baby with a janitor you met yesterday. Tell me you want my greedy aunt to use your child to drain your bank accounts. Tell me that's what you want. Jae-hyun stared hard at her lips. He threw the phone onto the passenger seat next to her leg. He didn't need the robot voice for this. He leaned all the way over the console, trapping her against the car door. He pressed his face deep into the crook of her neck, right below her ear. Mary froze, his hot breath ghosted over her skin. He dragged his nose slowly up the side of her neck, inhaling her cheap soap scent deeply. It was an incredibly intimate, deeply possessive action that made her entire body shiver. He slowly pulled back, his lips brushing against her jawline. The car horn from the vehicle behind them blared loudly. The light had turned green. Jae-hyun sat back in his seat, his face returning to a cold, blank mask. He grabbed the steering wheel and hit the gas pedal hard. The heavy SUV shot forward through the intersection, leaving the angry driver far behind. Mary sat completely still, her heart hammering wildly. She touched the side of her neck where his skin had just been. He was dangerous. He was broken and deeply obsessive, and she was trapped in his web. They pulled into the small parking lot of a local pharmacy. The neon sign above the door flickered weakly in the heavy rain. "Stay here," Jae-hyun typed on his phone, handing it to her so she could read the screen. "I will go inside." "No," Mary said, opening her door. "It's my body, I'm going in." She didn't wait for his permission. She stepped out into the freezing rain and ran toward the sliding glass doors of the store. The cold metal of the gold pen dug deep into Mary's fingers. Jae-hyun was too strong. His large hand covered hers completely, trapping her knuckles in a tight, heavy grip. He pressed his weight against her back, pushing her forward until her chest hit the edge of the glass coffee table. "Let me go," Mary yelled, kicking her heel backward. She hit his shin, but he didn't even flinch. He felt like a damn mountain made of stone. "Sign it," the robotic voice spoke from the phone lying on the couch behind them. "I said no," Mary cried out. She tried to drop the pen, but his fingers squeezed hers so hard she felt her bones grind together. Mr. Sterling stood on the other side of the table, perfectly calm. He watched the massive billionaire force the young, poor girl to sign her life away without a single drop of pity in his eyes. The two younger lawyers didn't even look up. They just kept their eyes on their perfectly organized papers. Jae-hyun forced her hand down. The tip of the gold pen touched the thick white paper. Black ink bled onto the signature line. Mary fought with every ounce of strength she had in her body. She twisted her wrist, trying to throw the pen across the room. But Jae-hyun shifted his stance, using his other arm to wrap tightly around her waist, pinning her completely against the table and his hard body. He moved her hand for her. He dragged her hand to form the letter M, then the E. Mary let out a frustrated, angry sob. Hot tears spilled out of her eyes and hit the glass table. She hated this. She hated him. She hated the universe for trapping her in this stupid, sick story. He didn't stop until her entire name was written on the dotted line. Mary Washington. The second the final letter was finished, Jae-hyun let go of her hand. He stepped back. Mary instantly spun around and threw the gold pen as hard as she could. It hit Jae-hyun right in the center of his chest and clattered to the hardwood floor. Before we see exactly how Mary handles being a permanent prisoner in this penthouse, take 1 second to leave a like on this video. It really helps the algorithm find more people who love gritty, dark romance stories just like you do. I also want to know what you guys are thinking right now. Do you think Mary should start plotting a way to kill Jae-hyun to escape the contract, or should she try to hack his company to buy her own freedom? What do you predict the terrible Aunt Vonda is going to do when she realizes she is fully cut off from Mary's money? And have you ever felt completely trapped in a situation where someone bigger and stronger made a choice for you? Drop your answers in the comments below. And if you are addicted to this crazy story, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Let's get back to the mess in the living room. Mr. Sterling smoothly reached down and picked up the signed contract. He blew on the ink for a second, then slid the paper into a sleek black folder. "Excellent," Mr. Sterling said, fixing his silver glasses. "The document will be filed with a private judge within the hour. Congratulations, Mr. Lee. You are now a married man." Jae-hyun didn't look at the lawyer. He was staring at Mary. She was hugging herself tightly, taking deep, gasping breaths as the tears ran down her face. She looked small, completely broken, and full of raw hate. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and typed quickly. "Get out." Mr. Sterling nodded sharply. "Of course, sir. We will handle the security blocks regarding her family immediately. Have a good afternoon, Mrs. Lee." Mary glared at the silver-haired man. "If you call me that again, I will break your damn nose." Mr. Sterling just offered a fake, polite smile. He turned around, signaled the two younger men, and walked to the private elevator. The heavy steel doors opened, swallowed the three lawyers, and slid shut. The penthouse was dead silent again. The heavy rain had slowed down to a sad, constant drizzle against the massive windows. Mary wiped her wet face roughly with the back of her hands. She looked down at the empty glass table, then slowly looked up at the giant man standing a few feet away. He was watching her chest rise and fall. "Are you happy now?" Mary asked. Her voice was raspy and low. "You got your new toy. You got your little pet to keep locked up in your fancy cage." Jai-hyun slowly shook his head. He didn't pull his phone out to type. He just looked at her, his black eyes heavy with a dark, twisted emotion. "Don't look at me like that," Mary snapped. She took a step toward him, her hands balling into tight fists. "Don't pretend you care about me. If you cared, you would have let me leave. You are just as sick and selfish as my aunt. You just have a better suit." Jai-hyun's jaw tightened. A small muscle jumped in his cheek. That insult hit him hard. He took a slow step forward, reaching out to touch her arm. Mary slapped his hand away. The smack echoed loudly in the large room. "Do not touch me," Mary growled. "You bought my name on a piece of paper. You bought my legal status. You did not buy me. I will sleep in the guest room. I will cook my own food. And if you try to put your hands on me again, I swear to God, I will find a knife in that massive kitchen and I will use it." Jai-hyun stared at the red mark slowly appearing on the back of his large hand. He looked back up at her face. The fire in her dark brown eyes was real. She wasn't making empty threats. She was pushed into a corner, and she was ready to fight to the death. He slowly lowered his hand. He pulled his phone from his pocket and typed with his thumb. "You are safe here. That is all that matters." "Safe?" Mary laughed a harsh, bitter laugh. "I am trapped in a doomed story with a mute dictator who is going to die in 2 years. I am the furthest thing from safe." Jai-hyun frowned. He was tired of hearing about this crazy timeline. He typed again. "Go to the guest room, lock the door, rest." Mary didn't say another word. She turned her back on him and walked fast down the long glass hallway. She found a heavy oak door near the end of the hall, pushed it open, and stepped inside. It was a massive bedroom with a huge, soft bed and a private bathroom. She slammed the door shut and twisted the brass lock. It clicked heavily into place. Mary leaned her back against the cool wood and slid slowly down to the floor until she was sitting on the thick grey carpet. She pulled her knees to her chest and rested her head on her arms. She was officially Mrs. Lay. The plot of the trashy novel had won this round. She had managed to kill the twins' twist with the morning after pill, but the forced marriage had happened anyway. The universe was correcting the timeline, making sure the main pieces of the tragedy were locked in place. Mary closed her eyes and forced her brain to work. In the book After the Sudden Marriage, Aunt Vonda didn't just walk away quietly. Vonda was greedy. When Jai-hyun's lawyers froze Vonda's accounts and blocked her calls, Vonda completely lost her mind. She went straight to a sleazy gossip blog and sold the story anyway. She told the world that the famous, broken CEO had kidnapped a poor janitor. That gossip blog post was the spark that started the fire. It made Jai-hyun's board of directors panic. They voted him out of power, causing his mental health to spiral, which eventually put him on that deadly train 2 years later. Mary opened her eyes. The dark room felt extremely cold. If the lawyers just blocked Vonda today, the gossip blog post was going to hit the internet tomorrow morning. She had less than 24 hours to stop the story from leaking. But how could she stop it from inside a locked room? She didn't have her phone. Vonda had the tracker on it, so Mary had intentionally left it in her locker down in the basement. She had absolutely no way to contact the outside world. Unless she used Jai-hyun's computer. Mary stood up from the floor. She walked over to the huge bed and sat on the edge. She needed to wait. She needed to wait until the middle of the night when the massive guard dog was finally asleep. Then she would sneak into his home office, find his laptop, and figure out a way to destroy Vonda's fake evidence before she could sell it. The hours dragged by slowly. The grey afternoon turned into a pitch-black, rainy night. Mary didn't leave the room. She didn't turn on the lights. She just sat on the floor near the window, watching the city lights blur through the heavy rain. Her stomach growled loudly. She hadn't eaten anything since the burnt eggs this morning. At exactly 8 o'clock, she heard heavy footsteps walking down the hallway. The footsteps stopped right outside her door. Mary held her breath. She stared at the brass door handle. A quiet knock echoed in the room. Then the sound of a heavy tray being placed carefully on the floor. The footsteps slowly walked away. Mary waited 5 full minutes before she stood up. She unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. The hallway was empty and dark. Sitting on the carpet right outside her door was a large silver tray. It was covered in hot, steaming food. There was a huge bowl of chicken soup, a plate of warm bread, and a tall glass of ice water. A small, white piece of paper rested next to the bowl. Mary pulled the tray inside and locked the door again. She picked up the note. It was written in thick black ink. His handwriting was surprisingly neat and sharp. "Eat, I am not the enemy." Mary stared at the simple words. She crumpled the paper into a tight ball and threw it into the dark corner of the room. "Yes, you are," she whispered to the empty room. But she was starving. She sat on the floor and ate the soup. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. It warmed her freezing body from the inside out. When she finished every last drop, she placed the tray aside and went back to the door to listen. The penthouse was completely silent. She waited until the digital clock on the nightstand flashed 2:00 a.m. It was time. Mary slowly unlocked the door. She twisted the handle as quietly as possible and pulled it open. She stepped out into the hallway, her bare feet making absolutely zero noise on the hardwood floor. She walked past the massive kitchen and into the living room. The streetlights outside cast long, scary shadows across the expensive furniture. She remembered seeing a heavy set of double doors near the front entrance when the terrible lawyers were here. That had to be his office. She moved quickly, hugging the wall like a shadow. She reached the double doors and pushed one open. It wasn't locked. She slipped inside the office and carefully closed the door behind her. The room was huge. The walls were lined with dark wood bookshelves, and a massive glass desk sat perfectly in the middle. Sitting right on top of the desk was a sleek silver laptop. Mary smiled in the dark. She walked fast to the desk and opened the laptop. The screen flashed bright white, lighting up the dark room. It asked for a password. "Shit," Mary whispered. She stared at the blank password box. She didn't know anything about him. She didn't know his birthday, his middle name, or his favorite numbers. In the book, the author had described his password as something arrogant, something that showed how much he owned the city. She thought hard, biting her bottom lip. She typed King of Seattle. Incorrect password. She tried Lee Corp 1. Incorrect password. Mary felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. She only had a few tries before the computer locked her out completely, or worse, set off a silent alarm. She closed her eyes. What did he say to her this morning? When she told him he couldn't break the rules of the universe, what did he type back? "I make my own rules." Mary opened her eyes. She placed her shaking fingers on the keyboard and typed, "My own rules." She hit the enter key. The screen blinked and the desktop popped up. Holy shit, Mary breathed out. It worked. She quickly opened the internet browser. She needed to access the security cameras for the basement level of the Lee Corporation building. If she could hack in, she could delete the video footage of her working late last night. If Vonda tried to sell the story, she would say Mary was kidnapped. But if the footage was gone, Vonda had zero proof that Mary was ever even in the building. Mary typed fast, bringing up the company's private server. She clicked on the security portal. "Please enter level 1 authorization code." Mary groaned softly. She needed his phone for the secondary code. The laptop was useless without it. Suddenly, a massive, warm hand clamped down firmly over her left shoulder. Mary screamed out loud and spun around in the leather office chair. Jai Hyan was standing right behind her. He wore only his black sweatpants. His chest was bare, and his dark hair was completely messy. He looked like a demon standing in the harsh blue light of the computer screen. He leaned down, trapping her in the chair by placing both of his hands firmly on the armrests. He leaned his face in so close his nose almost touched hers. His black eyes were wide and completely wild. He didn't use his phone. He couldn't speak, but his heavy, angry breathing filled the silent office. He was furious. Mary pressed her back deep into the chair, terrified. I was just, Mary stuttered, her heart hammering out of control. "I was trying to fix it. My aunt is going to leak the story tomorrow. I needed to delete the security tapes to protect you." Jai Hyan stared deeply into her wide, panicked eyes. He reached down with his right hand and hit a button on the laptop keyboard. The screen went completely black, plunging the room into total darkness. He moved his hand from the keyboard and wrapped his thick fingers entirely around the front of her throat. He didn't squeeze hard enough to stop her air. but the heavy weight of his palm pressing against her skin was a massive, dangerous warning. He leaned his forehead gently against hers. He reached his left hand into his sweatpants pocket, pulled out his phone, and typed blindly with his thumb. The robotic voice cut through the dark, quiet room like a sharp knife. "Never sneak around my house again." Mary stared at the glowing blue light reflecting off Jae-hyun's bare chest. The heavy weight of his thick hand rested flat against her throat. He wasn't squeezing, he wasn't choking her, but the pure, raw power holding her in the leather chair was a terrifying warning. She swallowed hard, her skin sliding against his warm palm. I was just trying to stop her," Mary whispered, her voice shaking violently in the dark. "In the morning, the gossip blog, Vonda is going to post the story. She's going to say you kidnapped me. I had to delete the basement security footage so she wouldn't have any proof." Jae-hyun's dark eyes scanned her terrified face. His heavy, angry breathing slowly started to calm down. He kept his right hand on her throat, but the deadly tension in his broad shoulders finally dropped. He moved his left hand and hit the spacebar on the laptop keyboard. The screen lit up again, blinding Mary for a second. He let go of her throat. Mary gasped softly, sinking deeper into the soft leather chair. She wrapped her arms around her chest, watching him closely. Jae-hyun leaned over the desk, keeping his body caging her in. He grabbed the wireless mouse and clicked a few times. He opened a private email account and pulled up a message that had been sent exactly 20 minutes ago. He tapped the screen with his long finger, silently telling her to read it. Mary leaned forward, squinting at the bright screen. It was an email from Mr. Sterling, the terrible silver-haired lawyer. "Mr. Lee, the transaction is complete. You are now the sole owner of the Seattle Daily Dirt Gossip blog network. We have seized all incoming emails and server data. Vonda Washington's drafted post and attached photos have been permanently deleted from their system. She has been blocked from all future submissions." Mary's jaw completely dropped. She read the short email 3 times, making sure she was actually seeing the words correctly. She slowly turned her head to look at Jae-hyun. His face was a total, unreadable mask in the blue light. "You bought the entire company?" Mary asked, her voice cracking in pure disbelief. "Just to delete one single blog post?" Before we dive into the crazy reality of Mary's new life as a billionaire's captive wife, please take one quick second to leave a like on this video. It tells the algorithm exactly what you like, so it can push more gritty, dark romance stories straight to your screen. I also want to hear from you down in the comments. Do you think Mary should finally trust Jae-hyun to handle her toxic family, or should she keep trying to plot her own escape just to be safe? What do you predict the massive Lee Corporation board of directors will do when they find out their CEO secretly got married in his living room? And have you ever panicked and tried to fix a massive problem, only to find out someone else had already handled it way better than you could? Drop your answers below. And if you are completely hooked on Mary's fight to survive this deadly plot, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update. Now, let's get back to the dark office. Jae-hyun did not look amused by her shock. He pulled his phone from his sweatpants pocket and typed fast. The robotic voice was quiet but sharp. "I protect what is mine." Mary felt a hot, confusing flush creep up her neck. In the trashy novel she remembered, the CEO was a weak, broken man who just threw money at his problems and let the media tear him apart. The man in the book never bought a whole media company just to silence one greedy ant. He never fought back like this. She was looking at a completely different man. Or maybe her actions today had changed the story so much that she was creating a monster the original author had never even imagined. "You can't just buy everything," Mary argued, trying to find her anger again. What if she goes to a different website? What if she goes to the local news station on TV? Jae-hyun typed, "I will buy them too." "That is insane," Mary said, shaking her head. "You are going to drain your own bank accounts trying to stop her. You are playing right into the trap." He leaned down again, bringing his face inches from hers. He smelled like dark mint and warm sleep. He stared directly into her eyes, making sure she was paying full attention. He typed one final message. "Go to sleep, Mary. The war is over." He reached out and gently closed the laptop screen, plunging the office back into total darkness. He didn't wait for her to argue. He turned around and walked out the heavy double doors, his bare feet silent on the floor. Mary sat alone in the dark for a very long time. Her heart was still beating fast, but the terrible panic of the blog post was gone. He had fixed it. He had done exactly what he promised to do. He protected her. She stood up on shaky legs and walked slowly back to her guest room. She locked the heavy oak door, crawled under the thick covers of the huge bed, and stared at the ceiling until the sun finally started to rise. When Mary woke up, the bedroom was filled with bright, cold light. The heavy Seattle rain had finally stopped, leaving the sky a pale, washed-out grey. She sat up, rubbing her tired eyes. She looked down at herself. She was still wearing the same cheap grey janitor pants and the oversized white t-shirt. She felt dirty and gross. She walked into the private guest bathroom to wash her face. When she opened the door, she stopped dead in her tracks. Sitting on the edge of the large marble bathtub was a massive stack of shiny shopping bags. They were black with gold writing on the front, very expensive brands. Sitting on top of the bags was a small, sleek white box with a sticky note attached to it. Mary walked over and picked up the note. It was his sharp, black handwriting again. "Throw away the uniforms." She opened the small white box. Inside rested a brand new, extremely expensive cell phone. It was completely set up and ready to use. Mary let out a long breath. She hated that he was buying her things. It made the fake marriage feel entirely too real. It made the cage feel tighter. But she couldn't stay in her dirty work clothes forever. She dug into the bags. They were filled with soft, thick sweaters, perfect-fitting dark jeans, and expensive silk underwear. Everything was exactly her size. How the hell did he know her size? She pushed that creepy thought out of her head and grabbed a black sweater and some jeans. She took a long, hot shower, washing the smell of the crazy yesterday off her skin. She put on the new clothes. The black sweater was so soft it felt like a warm hug. She hated how much she liked it. She grabbed the new phone and walked out of the bedroom. The penthouse was quiet. She walked down the long glass hallway toward the kitchen. She expected Jae-hyun to be gone. It was Tuesday morning. The CEO of a billion-dollar company should be at his fancy office downtown. But as she stepped into the massive kitchen, she froze. Jae-hyun was sitting at the island counter. He was fully dressed in a sharp, dark grey business suit. His black hair was perfectly styled, pushed back off his forehead. He looked like absolute power. He was drinking black coffee and reading something on a tablet. Standing right behind him near the fridge was a man Mary had never seen before. He was huge. He wore a tight black suit and had a tiny clear earpiece in his left ear. A bodyguard. Jae-hyun looked up from his tablet when Mary walked into the room. His dark eyes slowly dragged down her body, taking in the tight dark jeans and the black sweater. A very faint, satisfied smirk pulled at the corner of his mouth. He liked seeing her in the clothes he bought. Mary crossed her arms over her chest defensively. "You're still here," she said. Her voice sounded too loud in the quiet kitchen. Jae-hyun tapped his tablet screen and pushed it aside. He reached into his suit jacket, pulled out his phone and typed. "I was waiting for you." "Why?" Mary asked, walking to the coffee maker to pour herself a cup. She completely ignored the massive bodyguard staring at her. "You have a company to run. Don't let your fake wife slow you down." Jae-hyun stood up from the stool. He walked over to her, his polished black dress shoes clicking sharply on the clean floor. He stopped right beside her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek, heavy black credit card. The name Mary Lee was printed in perfectly raised silver letters on the front. He held it out to her. Mary stared at the card like it was a deadly snake. "I don't want your money, I told you yesterday. We are roommates with a legal paper, nothing more." He didn't pull his hand back. He just held the card there, waiting. He typed with his other hand. "Take it, buy whatever you want. Do not embarrass me by looking like a janitor." The robotic voice was cold and completely flat. Mary felt a sharp spike of anger hit her chest. She snatched the heavy black card out of his hand and shoved it deep into her jeans pocket. "Fine, if you want to waste your money, I'll happily help you." Jae-hyun's dark eyes sparked with a silent challenge. He liked when she fought back. It was sick, but he clearly enjoyed the fire in her eyes. He turned and looked at the huge bodyguard. He typed quickly. "This is Marcus, he is your shadow. You do not leave this building without him, ever." Mary looked at Marcus. The giant man gave her a short, respectful nod. "I don't need a babysitter," Mary snapped, glaring back at Jae-hyun. "I am going to read books in the guest room all day, unless you think my aunt is going to scale the side of the glass building to get me." Jae-hyun stepped closer to her, invading her personal space completely. He leaned down, placing his mouth near her ear. He couldn't speak, but his warm breath sent a violent shiver down her spine. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes and held up his phone. "Your aunt is handled. Marcus is here to make sure you do not run away." Mary clenched her jaw. The cage was fully locked. The guard dog was stationed at the door. "You are going to regret this," Mary whispered, her voice full of pure, cold promise. "You are trying to control a story you do not understand." Jai-hyun raised his hand and tucked a stray braid behind her ear. His touch was slow and incredibly soft, a crazy contrast to his harsh words. He typed one last message. "I understand everything. I will be home for dinner at exactly 7 o'clock. Be ready." He didn't wait for her to respond. He turned around and walked out of the kitchen, his dark grey suit looking sharp and dangerous. Marcus gave Mary one last look before following his boss out the door. The heavy front door of the penthouse clicked shut, locking automatically. Mary stood alone in the massive kitchen, her hands shaking as she held her coffee cup. The first day of her arranged marriage had officially started. She pulled the heavy black credit card out of her pocket and stared at the name printed on it, Mary Lee. The plot of the trashy novel had been altered, but the main pieces were still falling into place. She was trapped in the penthouse. The aunt was angry and looking for revenge, and the board of directors would eventually find out about the secret wedding. She had to figure out a new plan. If the twins' twist was dead and the gossip blog was dead, what was the universe going to throw at her next to force the deadly ending? She walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room and looked down at the busy Seattle streets far below. Cars looked like tiny ants moving through the grey morning. Suddenly, her brand-new white phone buzzed loudly in her pocket. Mary jumped. She quickly pulled the phone out. She hadn't given this number to anyone. Jai-hyun was the only person in the world who knew it. She looked at the screen. It was a text message from an unknown number. "We know what you did to Mr. Lee. You have 48 hours to leave the city, or we will release the truth about the janitor who trapped the king." Mary stared at the message, her blood running completely cold. It wasn't her aunt. Vonda didn't talk like that. Vonda didn't use words like the king. This was someone else, someone inside the Lee Corporation, someone who was watching the billionaire very, very closely. The deadly plot of the novel wasn't broken. It had just changed its shape. The real enemies were finally coming out of the dark.